What if I told you that we built a full functional MCP server in under 10 minutes? Crazy, right? But this is possible with the help of my simple and yet powerful three-phase plan, where we first gather a lot of context information as possible, then go into the planning mode and finally execute it. And the nice thing is, at the end you will see that we have a full functional MCP server working. In the first iteration, no weird import errors, no debugging phase things going on. It just works. And the nice thing is also, with these principles in place, you can also apply it to your use cases as well. So let's get started. Make sure you have Cloud Code installed or your other favorite agentic CLI coder. And now let's get started. So before we dive into the stages, let's be clear on the common goal that we have. And it's really important that me and my AI coding assistant are aware that we have the same goal. So the goal is a working MCP server for the Technova support example. And I'm responsible for providing the context information as well, the idea for the whole thing. And from the other side, Cloud Code will then give us a plan that we work on together, and also the code which Cloud Code will mostly do, since we will only be a quality tester and quality manager in this case, and do not really touch any code by our own. So this is our goal, and how we will achieve this is in these three-step phases that I will show you now. So phase one is the context gathering phase. And here we need to provide as much context as possible about our goal. And here you need to remember that you need to be a good asker. So for example, what do we want to achieve? So enable support agents resolve issues faster. And therefore we give up-to-date information on the model context protocol. And therefore we have an AI docs folder in place where we copy over the markdown from the online documentation and provide it there into the code as markdown, so that Cloud Code can read it with the read files capability. And also we will let Cloud Code consult us on what primitives to use based on our requirements. So the second question, for example, how does the CM look like? So therefore we will provide the SQL schema and real example data. And how does the logs look like? There we will provide also the system as well the custom logs. And what framework do we want to use? So we want to use fast MCP, right? And therefore we provide the library docs using context 7. And what Python package, what do you want to use? Use UV, therefore make a web search on how to use UV, and many more. So if you come up with more questions, the better. And remember is provide as much context as possible and use the right capabilities to retrieve the context. And this is the step where it differentiates between the pros and the amateurs. And if you're really good on this phase here, the next two phases will be so much easier. And now let's have a look on the second phase. So the next step is the planning phase. And in here we need to be a good planner. So we loaded up all the context information, and now Cloud Code comes up with the first draft of the plan. And here we need to iterate it and say, okay, maybe do this differently and this one here and so on. So this is important that we are also then very good at this part here, because here planning saves us time and tokens in the long run. And once you're really precise here, we can save it then later. So iterate on a plan before diving into the coding part, and then we jump now to the third phase. And the third phase is the execution phase. And here we need to be a good coder or good colleague, because then Cloud Code will generate all the code for us, and we need to see if this aligns to the plan. And here, as I mentioned earlier, if we have done really good at the two first phases, it will be so much easier here in this phase for us. And the key concept in this phase is, during the execution mode, make sure that the plan is correctly implemented. I know since the vibe coding hype is there, many people are not really aware of good coding practices, but still, if you spot some things that you find weird, let them explain to you, and this is the part to interrupt and to stick to the plan. Okay, so now we have gone through the whole plan, quite easy, right? But even though this makes a huge difference, as you will see it then now when we implement this whole thing. So let's go now to implement it. So now in this phase, it's all about that you collect and gather the context information that you need. In your case will be maybe different. I've already prepared it here for my case. So what I've done, I've copied over the markdown documentation here from MCP into the AI docs folder that later Cloud Code can read. I've provided here the database, the logs, and I've also opened it up in dbweaver and got the SQL schema. And also from the log side, I have it here. And then I also came up with some initial prompt where I provided all this context information with the goal that we discussed, with the example data. You see here the SQL schema of the tables. And this is the work that you really need to do. I've already done it, and you needed to do this for your use case. There's only one thing that we can do together, and this is set up the context 7 for later retrieving then the fast MCP library documentation. Okay, so let's do this together. First of all, make sure that you have Cloud Code installed. If not, please pause the video, do this. It's really simple. And then now we can continue adding the context 7 server. So please use context discovery service like Smivery. I will use here my side project agent devs, and then there here just go to resource context 7 or just use the search. Then click here on documentation, scroll down, and then you will see here the different clients where you can use it. In our case, we will use it here in Cloud Code, right? And from here we then select this command here and then paste it in here in our terminal. And then we can check if this was correctly set up with the command cloud mcp list, and you see, voila, it's there. So we have now the context gathering phase is now completed, and in the next step I will show you a little cool trick to further improve our prompt before we then go into the planning phase. Okay, before we go into the planning phase, I will show you a little tool to further improve the prompt that you give into the planning phase. And this is called Prompt Cowboy. I don't have any kind of collaboration with them. I just find their service really useful, and they have a free tier that we can leverage. So what I will do now is I've prepared a prompt, and now we will further enhance it with this service. So you see here my prompt starts with the goal. You are a senior MCP server developer, blah, blah, helping design this. Then we provide the example data, the SQLite schema, and so on. So quite good, but let's see how the improved one will look like. And here's the result, and you see it's much better organized. So we have then here the situation, we have the task, the objective, the knowledge. And what is also really nice is your life depends on providing a detailed technical example. Okay, this is quite hard. But what is really nice is here this section here where you can iterate and improve your prompt with these questions related to your prompt. So for example, what specific insights do agents need? So we can work on here further and then get also this input to further improve our prompt. And if you work also on this better, then of course the planning mode will be so much easier. But for this purpose, I will now stick with this here. It's quite good, and now we will see this in action in part 2 where we will plan our whole MCP server. Alright, so let's start with the planning. I will fire up here Claude in my terminal, therefore I just write Claude, and now we're good to go. And so I will now paste in my prompt that I got from Prompt Cowboy, and now we need to switch into the planning mode, and therefore use the keys Shift Tab, and then you see it here in the green one. Plan mode is now activated. I intentionally left out the fast MCP as well, the UV part in the prompt, because I want to show you this then how we iterate on the planning. So I will now just click enter, and then I will present you the plan and see how we will then together work on the plan. Okay, so here's the first draft of the plan. And we see phase 1 core infrastructure, set up a project, structure and dependencies, create a database interface layer. Okay. MCP server development with 5 core tools, get customer context, search tickets, analyze logs. Configuration, documentation, create configuration, blah blah. Key features, real-time customer context. Okay, but in this plan, as I mentioned out, there is nothing with fast MCP or how in which framework we then implement this, only showing here the tools. But the thing that this plan covers is that we have now the understanding built a comprehensive MCP server that integrates SQLite database with log analysis and provides intelligent support insights. So the goal is clear and understood. And now further enhance this plan. So also we want Cloud Code to be a consultant for us in terms of the MCP primitives that we can also leverage. We also need to mention fast MCP and UV, right? So let's do this. I click here no, and now I will further specify the things. So as you see, we've first write down here that you're MCP consultant on the primitives, what we should use regarding our requirements, also that we want to use fast MCP as a library to implement. Here use context 7 MCP server to get up-to-date information, also the UV part, make a web search to get the information. So let's see how the second draft will look like. Okay, so this is the second draft, and here now we see the stack, fast MCP2, UV package manager, SQLite integration, and async processing. We see the primary tools: get customer profile, search support tickets, analyze customer logs, find similar issues, get resolution sessions, and supporting infrastructure. We see resource endpoints for knowledge base access and prompt templates for common scenarios. So this is exactly what we've covered in the MCP course with these primitives, and I like that now Cloud Code come to this solution here. And here we also now see how the MCP server codebase could look like. So we have the server.py, we have a nice separation of concern with the database layer, log analyzer, context engine. I don't exactly get what the context engine does at the moment, but for me this looks in a good format that we can now work with. I now will further work on this plan to get some infos on this part that I don't understand. So also this is some learning also for you. Don't take everything that you get here, just work on the plan further. Okay, so let's see then in just a couple of minutes when I've completed the final draft. So here's my final plan, and I need to work with this, but now I like this one. So we have now 3 tools in place, 3 resources to get the customer information and the logs related to it, and also the prompts that acts as like a baseline for all support agents so that they don't need to be good prompt engineers. So we see here prompt for consistent quality, structured ticket analysis, and so on. And now we completed phase 2, and now we will switch over to the last phase where we then will implement it according to our plan. Okay, moment of truth. And now we are entering the last stage, the execution stage. And here we need to be a good coder and a good colleague to help Cloud Code to reach our goal. And here, this is where all our context gathering and planning pays off if done correctly. And now we simply click yes, and we just watch and see if everything goes accordingly to our plan. And we see here now that Cloud Code starts with the UV project structure. So we create here a new folder and then add fast MCP. We click yes to proceed. This seems fine. I will just now continue all these steps and bring you into when it's the most interesting parts then back. Okay, so it took maybe around 4 minutes or so, and we have now here the complete project structure in place. Still also have the hello.py that we can get rid of. And you see here now the server.py, really impressive. You see we now create here the database service and the log parser service. And then we have here nicely structured the tool sections, so get customer. We have here search tickets. We are using the correct decorator from fast MCP, and get recent logs. And we have here the resources sections where we leverage the log parser and then list logs based on the customer ID that we then get here from the resource URI. So exactly like we did on the course. And yeah, it's really impressive. Okay, and now let's test it out. I've interrupted here Cloud Code because it wanted to run with Python, and this is not correct since we need to use UV, right? So uv run and then server.py. And voila, wow, it works on the first try. No weird import errors, nothing, it just works. How cool is that? And now let me configure the Cloud Desktop JSON so that we can really test it out with Cloud Desktop like we did in the course. So therefore I'm opening up here the Cloud Desktop config JSON that you can find in your users folder inside of library, application support, Cloud, and then here this JSON. What we now need to do is to configure this new wipe coded server. And so again, we have here the name of the server and we have the command. So I really specify here where UV is because we need UV to run it. And then the arguments, so where we can find the server. Here with the directory, from here we need to specify the directory, then run, and then the name of the server. So if we go in here, then we right click on this and then copy path, move on to this part again, and then replace it to the new location, paste it in, and then get rid of the last part, of course, because this is then here. And now save it, and now we can restart Cloud Code to check if it's there. I'm now here on my Cloud Desktop, and if we open up here search tools, you see Teknova Vibe MCP Server and you see RAP, our 3 tools. And if we click here on the plus button and also select it here, voila, we also have here our prompts in place. How cool is that? So I tested now our wipe coded MCP server with the default prompt that we also used in the course, and it's the same response and even a bit better than I expected. So we see here the customer information about ACME, a big customer with the right contact persons here, and also the tickets, the all 3 open tickets, critical, high, medium, and also a root cause analysis from the logs, all issues from the OAuth authentication changes on May the 4th morning. And also then some further information down on recommended actions for the meeting. Really impressive. So you see how we use strategic wipe coding to develop a MCP server, function MCP server that works on the first iteration without any errors spinning up. And let's recap what we've learned. So you and your agentic coding assistant should be aware of the same goal, and you should provide the context and the idea and also be responsible of the plan and the code that is provided to you. And here follow the 3-step plan that we've now covered. So the first thing is be a good asker and get as much context information as possible. So, and use the right capabilities to retrieve the right context, of course. So maybe read files, use context 7, a web search, it's up to you. But really work on this step very good, because from then the others are so much easier. Once you loaded up all the context, go into the planning mode here, be a good planner. Cloud Code will give you the first draft, don't accept it, work further down, and planning saves us time and tokens in the long run. And of course the last one is be a good coder, be a good colleague. So if the code blocks are presented to you, don't accept them easily. Ask some questions and then make sure that the plan is correctly implemented. That's all. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you in the next one.